Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today, it could be called a lot of things, but I called it warm-ups using large brushes. This was a play session that I had in my journal that went terribly wrong and then kind of redeemed itself at the end. It was inspired after watching the Dina Wakley demo on using her large brushes to do really free portraits and abstracts in her journals. So these are her new really wide brushes, and basically what her instructions were was to get some acrylic paint, water it down a little bit, and just use your brush to draw in an image or a portrait, which I did. And when I first did this, I was actually really impressed because it kind of looked like a face, which, you know, without very much effort, I was pretty pleased with. So I wanted to have another go. And, you know, again, I'm not sketching anything out beforehand. I'm just using the brush. You can see with this one, I'm being a little bit more confident with my brush strokes. This one looks a little bit more realistic than the last one. I was struggling somewhat with the hair. I think the main reason this one works a little bit better than the other one was I had probably more of a mid-tone on my brush at this stage. It was a little bit watery, and then I could go back in with the side of the brush and put in some of those detail-y bits with the edge of the brush, which I really liked how that ended up. So once I'd done this page, I was sort of more dubious about the last page, going, oh, it wasn't all that great to begin with. So then I decided to go back and play with it. And to be honest, you should never go back and play. You should just leave it as it is and, you know, think of it as a learning technique and move on. But I didn't. So I just kept playing, and I had paint on my palette or my glass mat, so of course I had to use it. So I just went into another double page and spread the extra paint out, just sort of had it drip down a little bit, and just really loose abstracty brush marks, which again is something Dina did with her leftover paint. So another technique that she was showing on the day was, if anyone's sort of done old face painting, where you load up your brush with 3 or 4 colours and then drag them across the page. And while I really liked the technique, I wish I hadn't done it over the face, because it just ended up being a disaster. I really hated it. So I was really frustrated with myself, and then I thought, oh, maybe if you paint it all in, it won't look that bad, and it will look worse. And it was just like, oh, what do I do with this? Now, there's honestly not very many times when I'm working in my journals that I feel like that with the page, but this page I truly did not like, and it was really bugging me. And I will link in the description box below the page redo I did of this, because I did actually the next day put something over the top of it, because I really didn't want this sitting in my journal, which is probably bad, because it was a good learning technique. I learned something from it, but I didn't feel so bad about it because I had this one in here, and I wasn't going to cover it all up. I was going to force myself to leave this one in here. Even though I really liked it, it didn't seem finished to me. So but I've dealt with it, and that's still staying in my journal. But this one, it was just really bugging me. So anyway, I had paint left, so I went on to this last page and added the extra paint. So the paints that I'm using at the moment are, the one that I painted out originally was Night, and then I've got magenta and cheddar and fuchsia together. So I sort of painted it over, and then I thought, oh no, I need to tie it together. And then I painted that circle, which I hated, so I wanted to do something to that. So I went back with some marine paint and added some water to that. And then I got the scribble sticks out and started to scribble over that. I was using the same colours as I used in the background, so the fuchsia and the cheddar. But I was back to my old tricks of adding too much, I think. I wasn't happy with it, so I kept adding and I kept adding. Now, that can be a blessing and a curse in some cases. It depends on how you look at it, because if you keep adding stuff, you might get to a stage where you really like it, or you might get to a stage where you really, really hate it. And that's that. When you've added so much that you can't possibly do anything more with it, it's time for the black or white paint to come out probably. So while I was playing around, I thought I'd do some mark making over the top. I really liked the cheddar colour, but I'd sort of lost that, so I wanted to go back in and put some more in. I'm just using again the larger brushes to add some of the mark making, and using different sides. So using the side of it to get those really thin lines, and adding in some more of that fuchsia colour as another piece of mark making. So one of my mark making habits, I suppose, is to always connect the marks to the edges of the page. So you can see that one's going straight across the middle. The cheddar dots at the top have gone off the page, same with the ones on the side. Because I had extra paint, which again is a bad habit, I just keep painting until I've got it all done. I don't actually stop. So I was again sitting there feeling really frustrated with this page because it just didn't look the way I wanted it to. So then I got out the gloss sprays and started speckling that, because sometimes I find if I speckle bits and pieces over the top, that helps me get a more cohesive look. But it didn't, and the thing that was, I suppose, really bugging me were those two circle shapes on the page. They, perhaps if I had a third circle there, but they were just sort of floating there. They weren't anchored or tied to the page in any way, and they were just really, really bugging me. So I was sort of racking my brain of what to do and how to fix it. And my usual go-to is, if I get to a stage like this where I've got a background that it's colourful and it's got some bits and pieces in it I like, I will either stencil over some of it and black the rest of it out. So this is called redactive painting. So with that circle up in the corner, I thought, well, this stencil will sort of fit into it really nicely. So this is a group of 3 faces. It's one of the Dina Wakley stencils. It's one I really love because it's loose and sketchy, which is very much like her artwork. And you can see there that sort of already is tying that circle to the page by having the necklines extend down through that middle line. It's grounded that circle, so it's not floating as much anymore. But it still wasn't. I still wasn't happy with the other side. So I decided I might go for these masks. Now, again, if you've been watching Dina's demos, this is a technique that she does an awful lot when she's, not happy with something that she's done. And it's this redactive painting around a mask. If you don't have a mask like this is one of Dina's, use a figure out of a magazine and just paint over the top of it. If you really like the figure shape, I'd suggest laminating it, and then you've got it for a while. You don't lose it, because magazine images, if you paint over them, they will get loose and get wrecked. But the other trick that Dina always uses as well is to repeat an image. So doing that 3 times down the page sort of gives you that repeated element. To tie both pages together, I thought I'd extend that night paint across the page. So it looks like those 3 figures are looking at the other 3 figures on the page. And again, you've sort of got that repeatedness of the 3 faces and the 3 figures. Having repeated shapes really, really helps when you're putting a piece together as well. When I got to this stage, I actually started to like this page again, even though it looks like a bit of a mess. But the abstract figures on the left hand side now have something really interesting in the middle, and the right hand page with those faces in that sort of circle shape look interesting as well. So to define the figures, I've just gone around with a really sketchy white paint pen to make really sketchy lines around it. With the figures on the right hand side, I'm going in and putting the whites of the eyes, which is something I really like to do with all my figures, just so they actually look like eyes, that they draw your attention. I'm also going in with a little bit of the white pen too, just to highlight. I put the highlights in so they stand out a little bit more on the page. So when I was finished with this, it needed something, so I went in with my scribbly writing. Again, this kind of connects both pages, so you've got the writing that goes across, and I was writing about, you know, how frustrated I was with this page, but it was starting to come together. And sometimes when I'm working in my art journal, the journaling can be as, you know, boring as that. It's like, oh, this is now working. I was really frustrated by it, but now it's going okay. It's not usually groundbreaking stuff that I write in my journals. The final thing that I decided to add was the word art, and then just again going around with my paint pen just to highlight it. So that was my finished page. So this is a close-up of the two warm-up drawings I did and where the paints came from to get to the end result. This is the second portrait that I was a little bit happier with. I do like doing the stabilo over the top. And this is the final page that I ended up working through my issues on. So all I can say, I've seen a lot of posts recently on some of the Facebook groups about, you know, people going, oh, you know, I hated this page and I don't want to do with it. Just keep working on them. And at the end of the day, if you really hate it, it's just a piece of paper. You can always paint over the top of it. But before you paint over the top of it, try doing a mask on it, because you can sometimes be really surprised that that does actually finish off your page for you. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye for now.